Now, there are more skeletons tumbling out of the cupboard of whistleblower Christopher Wylie. Deposing before a UK parliamentary committee, Wylie has made some fresh revelations about his company's links to India. WION has accessed Wylie's 122-page deposition in which he disclosed that Cambridge Analytica's parent company, SCL, had been hired to conduct in-depth research into quote-unquote honour killings in India's states of Punjab, Haryana, Uttar Pradesh and Rajasthan. The question we are asking is this: who hired SCL? For now, Wylie is not telling us. It is no secret that self-styled village councils in these states frequently issue tyrannical diktats on inter-caste and inter-religion marriages. Many have ended in terrible bloodshed. But who invited a foreign company like SCL to roam the states and quote-unquote propose interventions to stop the so-called honour killings? Let's take a closer look at when SCL was in those 4 Indian states and who was in power at that point in time. According to this deposition, Cambridge Analytica's parent company SCL researched honour killings in India from 2009 to 2010, specifically in the states of Haryana, Punjab, Uttar Pradesh and Rajasthan. More than 1,000 people were killed in these killings all over India. The overwhelming majority was from these 4 states. Now here's the thing. 2 of these states were then ruled by the Congress party, and of course, it was also the Congress-led UPA coalition in power at the centre in New Delhi. So what exactly were SCL researchers doing in these states and how did they go about doing their job? Christopher Wylie of Cambridge Analytica deposed, and I quote, SCL helped its client better understand the often convoluted and secretive culture surrounding honour killings. SCL analysed the issue via problem space mapping, and on that foundation proposed a number of interventions to stop honour killings. Now, we know from the whistleblower Wylie's earlier disclosures that Cambridge Analytica had India's Congress party on its list of clients. We even saw a poster of the Congress party symbol, the hand, on the wall behind Wylie on our screens. The Congress has denied that earlier claim. In its latest deposition, Wylie has not disclosed whether the study on honour killings was also commissioned by the Congress party or indeed who the client was. Let's take a closer look at SCL's procedure in India then. SCL's work was spread across 4 states, suggesting that its client could have been a federal agency. Wylie also deposed, saying that SCL often found the local authorities sympathetic to the evil practice of honour killing. This virtually proves that SCL interacted with various organs of the state government and that the latter was obviously aware of SCL's study. The questions we are asking on WION is this: of the state governments of the time, also the Congress party which was at the centre, and these are the questions: who was SCL's client? Was it the Congress party that commissioned the study? If so, why on earth would the Congress party, India's oldest political party, need a foreign analytics firm to make recommendations on an essentially domestic Indian problem? Let's assume that the Congress party was not the client for a moment. Then it could only have been a foreign government or a foreign NGO or a foreign rights group, in which case the ruling Congress would have definitely known, it should have known, it was in power. Why did they allow them to conduct this study, and were any of these so-called recommendations then really implemented later? Clearly, we haven't heard the last of this. A few more rattling bones could well tumble out of that closet in the coming days. As they say, watch this space. The Wylie papers detail the work undertaken by the company in various other countries, and we went through that 122-page report to pick the highlights for you. Starting with the US, Wylie submitted emails that detailed the kind of work done by Cambridge Analytica during the American presidential election. His submission includes details about several business contracts, scores of emails and legal opinion. Documents show that Cambridge Analytica's parent firm was in touch with a Canadian company. This company had set up an app. What did the app do? It built psychological profiles of people, and this was partly based on data from Facebook. These psychological profiles were then used to create personality clusters, meaning clubbing people with similar ideas and personalities together. This makes target voter segments. These segments were approached in various American states, and this information was shared with John Bolton's PAC. SCL paid a Canadian firm $200,000 for harvesting data from Facebook and other social media platforms. Another document shows that SCL paid $500,000 to a third party to create a platform it could use to target American voters in 2014. It's been going on for a while, evidently. Another startling revelation is that in 2012, British military psychological warfare unit paid Cambridge Analytica to train its staff on how to assess the effectiveness of psychological operations. And this data mining firm helped British psychological operations in various places, including conflict zones like Libya and Afghanistan. The released documents also detail how Aggregate IQ, which is the Canadian firm employed during US elections, was active in Trinidad and Tobago. It was instrumental in a political campaign in that island nation. Clearly, Cambridge Analytica has spread its tentacles far and wide. India is not the only country in the subcontinent as well where Cambridge Analytica conducted their projects. In the 122-page document, there is also mention of Pakistan and the work done by this data mining company there. Christopher Wiley told British lawmakers that Cambridge Analytica carried out anti-jihadist projects in Pakistan and Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. In 2009, the parent company SCL carried out behavioral research in the federally administered tribal areas of Fatah region of Pakistan and 2 locations in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. Wiley said, and I'm quoting, "The primary aim was to understand ways to reduce behaviors associated with support for recruitment into violent jihadist and militant Islamist groups. Based on these findings, the SCL recommended a strategy that included the empowerment of older women, educational campaigns focusing on the utilization of local welfare groups, and increased opportunities for locals, specifically targeted at youth and promotion of local heroes." But before undertaking this project in Pakistan, in 2007, SCL had studied the recruitment and support of violent jihadism in the Indian states of Kerala, West Bengal, Bihar, Jharkhand, Assam, and Uttar Pradesh. Some say that this is just a PR exercise, that Cambridge Analytica is trying to win some brownie points by saying that it also did some good work to help society in general. But let's take a look now at your contribution to this scandal. After all, it is your data that has sparked such a storm. It couldn't have happened without you. Remember all those surveys and market research questionnaires that you filled without giving them a second thought. That's when you shared your data willingly. So can you blame big data companies alone for this mess? Turns out you can, because you shared data on one platform. What these companies did with it, how they used it, even sold it, was definitely ethically wrong. Cambridge Analytica has no qualms in admitting that they gather data to drive political campaigns and enhance marketing for commercial brands. Had it not been for Christopher Wiley, we would have had no idea about the measures used to harvest data and misuse it. But does that mean the government of Britain, the UK government, was not in the know about the firm's transgressions? We ask this because the company is based in the UK. Cambridge Analytica has worked on multiple projects in countries spanning from Mexico to South Sudan. Some studies were undertaken for individual entities, while some for governments to ensure better governance. Unless a said government is using such data firms' research to manipulate an election process, something that is sacrosanct to the idea of democracy, there is no cause for concern. Having said that, these data companies cannot be given a free hand either. Whether their work is with or without the consent of respective governments, there is definitely a need to regulate these companies and prevent them from playing Big Brother. This, of course, is work in progress. And now to the storm in the coffee cup, coffee mug. A Los Angeles-based judge has ruled that Starbucks and other coffee sellers must put a cancer warning on their coffee or pay millions of dollars in fine. In 2010, a little-known not-for-profit group found that there were toxins in coffee, and it sued some 90 coffee retailers, including Starbucks, on ground that they were violating a California law requiring companies to warn consumers of chemicals in their products that could potentially cause cancer. One of those chemicals is acrylamide, a byproduct of roasting coffee. That's what the beans release when you roast coffee. It is present, they say, in high levels in brewed coffee. Starbucks has lost the first phase of this trial, in which it failed to show the level of acrylamide in coffee was below that which would pose a significant risk of cancer. In the meantime, the National Coffee Association has said that the industry was considering an appeal and further legal actions. The association asserted that the US government's own dietary guidelines state that coffee can be part of a healthy lifestyle. But research tends to be directed and motivated by a sponsor. And nutrition research has a very interesting history. For the moment, we'll stick to coffee and look at what research at various points in time has found over the years. We're looking at the benefits and hazards of drinking coffee as spelt out by researchers in the last 17 years. Let's begin with 2001. A study found a 20% increase in the risk of urinary tract cancer for coffee drinkers. The finding was repeated in a 2015 meta-analysis as well. In 2007, some of the data analysis found preventive benefits for cancer from drinking coffee. One analysis showed that drinking 2 cups of black coffee a day could reduce the risk of liver cancer by 43%. Come to 2011, studies found that 4 or more cups a day had a preventive effect on the risk of stroke. The same year, a study followed nearly 59,000 men from 1986 to 2006 and found drinking coffee to be highly associated with lower risk of prostate cancer. In 2012, more meta-analysis of studies on heart failure found 4 cups a day provided the lowest risk for heart failure, meaning coffee was good. A meta-analysis of 36 studies in 2013 with more than 1.2 million participants found that moderate coffee drinking was associated with a low risk of heart disease, meaning it was good again. 2 other studies found that drinking coffee reduced your total mortality risk slightly. Last year, a massive study on coffee and mortality survey in 10 European countries found that drinking coffee regularly could significantly lower the risk of death. Eventually, everyone dies, of course. And the latest research suggests that 3 cups of coffee prevents blockage of arteries. So you have to pick which study you want to believe in and drink or not drink coffee accordingly. Meanwhile, on the eastern frontier, India continues to keep vigil. Almost a year after the Doklam standoff, the forces are positioned along the border with China, always on alert. WION got a chance to visit the line of actual control in the northeast and see the preparedness of Indian troops. Kartikeya Sharma with this exclusive report.
What you see behind me is actually the way line of actual control looks like. So the Vichu pass which you see is the perennial pass. It's the only perennial pass in the whole of northeast. And the ridge which you see, the brown patch which you see, the forest which you see on top of the tree cover is actually China. And this is how the line of actual control actually looks like. I am at one of the forward positions, something which I cannot name because of the because it's a classified place. But it tells us that northeast line of actual control is pretty much different from other borders. Look at the vastness of the situation. Look at the fact that you can actually see the Chinese positioning. You can actually see that there is a village before the Chinese settlement, and then there are small PLA huts, which means only a kilometer of distance separates me. There is a nala which is actually dividing this ridge, and from our observation post we can see that's where the China starts. That mountain belongs to China. That mountain belongs to China, and that grey patch, that brown patch, and the whole forest which forms the base belongs to China. So that's how the LAC is maintained. You have ceremonial meetings which take place. You have scheduled meetings which takes place. People cross over. For example, there is a permanent shelter adjoining that ridge. When the Chinese come on our side, we have to go on that side whenever the Chinese call us for their BPMs, and it is on the left spur. So this is the first time any TV channel has been given access not only to come close to the line of actual control, go to area where line of actual control exists, where soldiers patrol them because you don't have barbed wires there, but to able to showcase what LAC is, what are the challenges, how China has created a new built-up economy in border areas, how Han Chinese have been brought up there, because this is southern eastern Tibet. It is actually not China. If you go by old classifications, this is actually southern part of the Tibet plateau, and that's where our LAC is. So the bottom line is that after Doklam, a lot of things have changed. New red lines have emerged, new challenges have emerged. India cannot be as confident, or India cannot be as aggressive as it can be on the western side of the border. India is strong here. The men have the confidence to keep the border safe. The preparation is very well planned and very, very good. But the difference between Pakistan and China is that its economy, that its military and the technical surveillance is far better than India. And these are the challenges, apart from infrastructure, which the Indian Army has been facing. And it is in this remoteness and the challenges which Army faces that embassy and its sanctity is maintained. And primarily for that, long patrolling, short patrolling, other sort of surveillance, hepta surveillance, all those things are deployed. But the bottom line is that yes, it's a different challenge for Indian Army and it's doing a good job in terms of keeping up to the challenge which the Chinese PLA or the Chinese Army poses to us.
And talking about conflicts, tensions between Russia and the West are at an all-time high. 5 days after the United States and Western nations expelled Russian diplomats, Moscow has retaliated. In an hour-and-a-half-long press briefing, an animated spokesperson from the Russian Foreign Ministry provided a point-by-point rebuttal to the charges made by Britain in the spy poisoning case. And then came the announcement. Moscow expelled 60 American diplomats, 58 from Moscow, 2 from the American consulate in Yekaterinburg. Moscow also withdrew consent to the opening of the American consulate in St. Petersburg after the results of a poll on Twitter which had asked participants to decide which office they wanted shuttered. The move is not first of a kind. Last year, President Putin had ordered that the US Embassy in Moscow reduce its staff by 755 employees after American sanctions against Russia for meddling in the presidential election. But the reduction involved only the excess staff like security guards, translators, cooks and so on. But with a stark reduction in diplomatic attaches, bilateral ties will only be strained further. Washington, D.C. remains unfazed, firmly backing their ally, the United Kingdom. At least on the face of it, White House seems to be in no mood to back down, criticizing the Kremlin for its actions.
Remind you that there is no justification for the Russian response. Our actions were motivated purely by the attack on the United Kingdom, the attack on a British citizen and his daughter. Remember, this is the first time that a weapons-grade nerve agent, Novichok, has been used outside of war on Allied soil. We have not taken these steps lightly. We've taken these steps in concert with our allies across the world. 28 countries now join the United States backing our allies in the decision to have kicked out 153 Russian spies from the various countries.
America's crackdown comes as a surprise for many, as President Donald Trump has been wary of rebuking his Russian counterpart. The American president's Twitter happy fingers have refrained from making any comment on the Skripal poisoning case on the microblogging site. In fact, days after Britain accused Russia of poisoning the former double agent, the US president picked his phone to congratulate Vladimir Putin on his re-election, something that has come under scrutiny in his own country.
In terms of a so-called congratulatory call, that is something that we do. That is something that past presidents have done. Even you may not like a country, you may have difficulties with a country, but that doesn't mean that you don't pick up the phone and have a conversation. The reality is, whether we like it or not, we have to have a relationship with a government as large and as significant as Russia.
Though the United States claim that the UK's word is enough, analysts believe that Britain has not provided enough evidence to prove its point.
I think many countries in the world, including in Europe, are hoping for better relations with Russia so that there can be cooperation, not just confrontation, towards solving common problems and working towards economic development and stability. Britain is using its still considerable diplomatic pressure, particularly with its ally, the United States, to try and pressure countries to take actions, regardless of the fact that, as behind the scenes I've got no doubt is being discussed in these European capitals, that the British government has produced very little, if any, evidence to support its claims.
And Russia too has accused the UK and the USA of arm-twisting other European nations into sanctions against Britain. Because even nations like Germany, who otherwise have maintained good ties with Russia, have backed the United Kingdom. Berlin expelled 4 diplomats for Russian diplomats. Russia called for a meeting with ambassadors of France and Germany among 9 other European Union nations to send a note of protest. But the diplomats made their support for Britain very clear.
Das Gespräch ist heute genutzt, zweierlei zu unterstreichen. Zum einen, es bleibt Deutschlands Interesse, ein gutes Verhältnis mit Russland zu haben. Ein Interesse, dass die Menschen in Deutschland, die Menschen in Russland sich verstehen. Wir bleiben dazu bereit und offen zum Dialog. Und zum anderen, angesichts der schlimmen Vorfälle von Salisbury ist es an der russischen Regierung, alles zu unternehmen, Klarheit und Transparenz zu schaffen und berechtigte offene Fragen zu beantworten.
Meanwhile, Britain is looking to tighten the noose further. Home Secretary Amber Rudd has asked British officials to review Tier 1 visas, which allow people who have more than £2 million of investment in Britain to stay in the country. From trade to investment to diplomatic ties, a lot is at stake here, and there is no urgent resolution of the crisis. The world could be staring at another Cold War or a Cold War-like situation. Crisis closer home now. Colombo is facing a tumultuous crisis. The President and Prime Minister are at loggerheads. Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe may lose a vote of confidence next week, and Sri Lanka may see a total collapse of its current ruling coalition government sooner than expected. The question we are asking is, irrespective of who stays in power or who takes over the reins anew, how are relations with the big neighbour India likely to pan out? Senior foreign editor Padma Rao examines that question.
Dear viewers outside Sri Lanka, straight up, it's complicated. In 2015, Sri Lanka's oldest and largest rival political parties, the Sri Lanka Freedom Party (SLFP) and the United National Party (UNP), formed a so-called national unity government. The UNP's Ranil Wickremesinghe became the Prime Minister and the SLFP's Maithripala Sirisena became the country's president. They were dragon slayers, for they had defeated Sri Lanka's strongman, previous President Mahinda Rajapaksa, the man widely credited as being the first head of state to bring a 30-year-long bloody civil war to an end. The SLFP split, with a substantial chunk crossing over with Mr. Rajapaksa to the opposition. Still, it was a personal victory for Mr. Sirisena, for he had defeated and succeeded his former boss, Mr. Rajapaksa, who's today in the opposition but is still one of the oldest members of the SLFP. Colombo is an unprecedented crisis today. The Prime Minister stands accused in a huge financial scandal involving central bank bonds. There is massive external debt. There is debilitating international pressure to fulfill promises of war crime inquiries. Law and order has deteriorated. Communal riots rocked Sri Lanka recently, and the government of national unity is all but united. At the centre of that crumbling cookie is a fierce face-off between the President, Mr. Sirisena, and the Prime Minister, Mr. Wickremesinghe. To make matters worse for the ruling government, Mr. Mahinda Rajapaksa formed SLPP, Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna, a new party. He swept the all-important local council polls held recently, and all the Rajapaksas, be it the former president or his brothers Basil and Gotabaya or his son Namal, are certain to sweep the next national elections due in 2020. A no-confidence motion has been introduced now by the joint opposition against PM Wickremesinghe. And given that the bulk of his own coalition partner, the SLFP, has sworn to oust him, it seems very likely that Mr. Wickremesinghe may lose office next week. But what lies in store for Sri Lanka? Will the opposition be able to enforce snap parliamentary polls? And if so, how will relations with India pan out, whichever constellation comes to power? There was great hope placed in the Sirisena-Wickremesinghe combine in New Delhi. India's relations with the earlier Rajapaksa regime had been friendly but frosty. Sri Lanka had drawn closer to China and Pakistan during the final years of the war. Under pressure from Tamil Nadu partners, New Delhi had kept up the frost and the icy shoulder as far as the Rajapaksas were concerned. But the new dispensation brought even nastier surprises. Steeped in overseas debt, mostly to China, the current government leased away a strategically crucial port and even 15,000 acres of adjacent land on a 99-year-long lease to China. Chinese investment has Lanka firmly in its grips, while Chinese strategists have the island nation firmly on their radar as a key turnpike of their maritime Silk Route. Whether brought forward or not, opinion polls show that the Rajapaksas are slated for a victory at the next national polls whenever they're held. Mr. Mahinda himself cannot be president again since he has served 2 terms, but he can be Prime Minister, and his brother, the former Defence Secretary Gotabaya, is widely being considered the next head of state. Of course, it's too early to predict how relations with India will be, but there have been several interesting changes. Mr. Mahinda Rajapaksa and his son and political heir Namal have indicated to WION in exclusive interviews that they are keen to improve ties with New Delhi. Though India still stands accused of interfering in the polls in 2015 that brought Mr. Mahinda's government down, there seems to be no ill will. But things are not all hunky-dory between the Rajapaksas and India either. At a seminar in Sri Lanka earlier this week, former Defence Secretary Gotabaya Rajapaksa referred to the contentious Chinese debt trap, and India also found a mention. Mr. Gotabaya said, and I quote, "The government of Mr. Sirisena has invited a power struggle between India and China by handing over national assets. It leased out the Hambantota port to China after creating a bogus debt trap. And when India became nervous, it offered them the Mattala airport." Unquote. This was in the Daily Mirror in Sri Lanka. All this may be true, but Mr. Gotabaya also gave away a whiff of his own intentions at the same seminar. Any upcoming government or leader, he said, and it could well be a reference to himself, will have to address the issue and overcome it. Padma Rao, WION.
Last week, India's External Affairs Minister Sushma Swaraj told Parliament that 39 Indians who went missing in Mosul 4 years ago had been killed. And now her junior minister, General V.K. Singh, will be visiting Iraq to bring back the remains of those killed in ISIS captivity. WION spoke to him on the upcoming visit. It's an exclusive interview.
विदेश मंत्री जी की एक बहुत साफ उनका सिद्धांत था कि जीवित या मृत जब तक ठोस सबूत नहीं होगा तब तक वो शांति से नहीं बैठेंगे। और इसलिए जितनी भी खबरें आई, जितने भी हमको जिसने भी कुछ बोला, मेरे जाने के अंदर वहाँ पर जो कुछ भी हमको नज़र आया, जो कुछ भी हमने विश्लेषण किया, उसके बेसिस पर हम कुछ नतीजों पर पहुँचे। खुदाई करवाई गई, अवशेष निकले, उनको बगदाद पहुँचाया गया, डीएनए मैचिंग शुरू हुई और तब जाकर ये सारी चीज़ सामने आई है। कोशिश ये थी कि जब तक ठोस सबूत ना हो तब तक इसके बारे में कुछ बोला ना जाए, क्योंकि जैसा सुषमा जी ने कहा था, अगर ठोस सबूत ना हो तो फिर धोखा देने वाली बात है। कोशिश चल रही है हमारी कि 8-10 दिन के अंदर सारी प्रक्रियाएं पूरी हो जाएं, क्योंकि वहाँ पे कोर्ट के ऑर्डर लेने हैं, जजेस का उसके ऊपर निर्देश लेना है, तब जाकर हम उनको लेकर आए।
That's a wrap on this edition of Gravitas. Thanks very much for watching.